Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
It's Wednesday, and every other Wednesday we have the great pleasure of joining Tim Finn for our Danny and Tim's Music Scene. It's presented by Cinematic Visions on our Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday here at the Reasonably Irreverent podcast. And, of course, we are now in a situation where we're headed back down toward shutdowns of a less onerous variety, although maybe they should be, but certainly that's going to affect the music industry. But we have never had much problem, Tim and I, finding things to talk about, and that will be the case today as we can range far and wide, give you some tips on some podcasts and some bits of audio that you can listen to, perhaps a documentary or two, and some pressing musical issues from the world of popular country music to music from the 50s to our great charitable endeavor that went on in Kansas City over the weekend, Thundergong, Jason Sudeikis' this time virtual presentation, which certainly still did raise a lot of money. I didn't see much of it. Tim did. I did donate money, so I probably should have soaked up a little bit more of the content. But anyway, those are some of the things we'll be talking about in another wide-ranging effort from Danny and Tim, and that comes your way next, right here on Danny and Tim's Music Scene. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. It's time now to get some great assistance on healthcare with Chad Beisel from no-nonsense-healthcareninja.com. And Chad, even your business's name would indicate that you have a real aggressive way and an important way to go after some health insurance for your clients.
What I've found out in the industry is just a lot of people are really confused. They don't know what plans are good, what their plans offer, how they cover. And so I've just taken the approach of being really educated on what options are available to clients and showing them all the options that are available and making sure they understand them so they can pick and choose what options are good for them.
And one thing that's really important, of course, is access to doctors and hospitals.
Absolutely. That's become a big issue for a lot of people. Some of the plans out there are going to restrict those clients to where they can and cannot go. So if you live just outside the Kansas City metro, some of the counties outside, you may not be able to go to some of the hospitals up here in the Kansas City area. So making sure that you have a plan that's got doctors and hospitals and places you want to go is really, really important today.
Learn more by visiting no-nonsense-healthcareninja.com and let Chad help you. Most of us have experienced auto accidents, and it's no fun. And even less fun is trying to work on the insurance aspects afterwards and getting full value after an auto accident. I'm here with David Cowan from RecExpert.com. And David, you have an unusual and important niche for people after an auto accident.
We have a passion to teach car wreck clients what they deserve. Getting your car repaired only fixes the damage and the paint. Getting paid for your car's loss in value is called diminished value. Chances are you've never heard of this before because most people aren't looking out for you. We help people collect thousands to tens of thousands of dollars for their car's loss in value after the wreck.
And if somebody wants to come to you for that, what's the original assessment cost them?
We offer a free review of any insurance claim to see how we can help.
You can't beat that. Great expertise and assistance in getting full value after an auto accident from David Cowan. Visit RecExpert.com and learn more. I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson and Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Tim, we adjust and keep adjusting, and the mayor came out earlier this week and set up some restrictions for Kansas City that, once again, are certainly going to affect a music scene that really wasn't really recovering that much anyway. But if you got to close a bar at 10 o'clock, that certainly affects any potential for music. If the gatherings are going to be at a certain percentage, that's certainly going to do it. So you see the NCAA tournament already, which takes place in March, is going to be played at one location. The news just doesn't get too good, does it?
No. And the unfortunate thing is, like the record bar had started to schedule more live shows. They'd gone in and put up all this equipment, sanitizers. They put, no hands, sinks and toilets and everything to make it a safer place to go. And there were tables and chairs, and they were, just making it kind of like what they did at Lemonade Park, but indoors and adjusted ventilation. And last weekend they had two shows. One of them went past 10 o'clock, so I'm guessing they could probably keep doing them under the rules and regulations they had imposed on themselves. We'll see. The Truman was doing a couple of things, mostly like stand-up comedy and I don't know, open stage, open mic. So it seemed like right at the point there that some venues were creeping slowly towards some kind of, live shows for the darker, colder days of winter, that maybe those might be suspended too. No word yet. I just saw the mayor was on CNN and briefly, Kansas City's mayor, and talking about how dire the situation was. And I think I hear from people who are involved in the medical field, and it's really not good. So I'm not too optimistic about anything getting better, not in the immediate future, and that includes live music.
Yeah, the only shreds of good news we're getting are the potential for a vaccine early next year, and until that comes, I guess I won't really believe it, because I think people do want to be optimistic about that. But Dr. Fauci did say the cavalry is coming, so hopefully that will be the case, and everything will be as effective as they say it will be. But until that happens, it seems like we're in for a nuclear winter when we've already had a nuclear 2020. But let's focus on some of the good things people are doing and trying to adjust to this. And Thundergong went on over the weekend, and it turned into a virtual type of thing, which had its benefits, and obviously it had its detriments too.
Well, the lineup was outstanding because they were able to recruit people who, like Brandy Carlisle, could sit in her backyard by a bonfire with her bandmates, the Twins, and sing a couple songs. One of the best moments of the show. She did a cover of the Stones' Wild Horses. That's one of the best Rolling Stones covers I've ever heard. So find that. It's out there. You can find the whole show on YouTube. But she was a guest. Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine. Lyle Lovett was announced like as the show was going on. I think they lined him up that day or late the night before. So, and Foo Fighters, of course, they went into the studio and recorded a version of a song that they recorded called Walk, I think in like 2011, but they did a special version for Thundergong. And it was all really, the music was fabulous. It was a lot of it, most of it was pre-recorded. Sudeikis and Billy Brimmelcon had a small band together at the Uptown that was performing live. And otherwise, it was all pre-recorded. but it moved very quickly, really nicely paced, really well organized and produced and directed. And like I said, a lot of the performers who had been there before were lamenting, like, oh, man, this is great, but I really miss being at that theater, on that stage, in front of that big crowd that was so enthusiastic, and behind stage was great. And I was feeling the same way because I'd been to the 3 previous shows, and it's a really special event. And being there live is, well, there's nothing like it. But, you know, they did their best by far, and the lineup was sensational. And like I said, you can find it on YouTube. It's like super quick 3 hours. It went by really fast because there were so many guests, and they brought them on and off so fast that it was really, really well done. And yeah, watch it. It's worth it.
Well, I did see the principals talking about how much money they have raised, and that really is the point. And for somebody to get involved in something like that and now have it become really kind of a Kansas City institution, it really is a cool thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, Rolling Stone wrote about it too. I think it was on their website Monday. Mentioned, you know, Foo Fighters and Tom Morello, and Ben Harper, Jack Johnson, both. They did a duet. One was in Hawaii, one was wherever Ben Harper lives. I'm not sure. I think he's in New York, maybe. But that was very cool. Very, very low key.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
They did a Bob Marley cover, and then something else. So that was really nice. It was all it was. I frankly didn't expect I'd watch it start to finish, but I did, because it moved so well, and I was always interested in whoever was performing. What was also cool was 2 John Prine songs ended up being covered. We'll mention him later, but and both 2 highlights of the night. Nathaniel Rateliff did a song from John Prine's, the last record he put out. It was called Summer's End, great. And then Rona Judd and her husband, Cactus Mosier, did Angel from Montgomery, which is one of John Prine's greatest songs, one of the greatest songs ever, and she killed it. So that was really nice. So, there was a lot of really nice surprises like that.
Well, that's a good deal. People can, as you said, look it up on YouTube, and if they missed it, or if they just watch parts of it like I did, soak it in and get it in its entirety. It really won't be much different than it was when it was originally aired, because so much of it is recorded anyway. So, well, let's get into the John Prine thing on a few levels. Of course, he passed away fairly recently, and the CMA Awards were recently, and those award ceremonies generally do some kind of in memoriam or something like that. And Jason Isbell and Sturgill Simpson not really too thrilled with the way that played out at their award ceremony.
Yeah, I don't ever watch that show. I think
me neither.
Times I was forced to cover it would be the only times I watched it. And so I just woke up the morning after, and people were on my social media feeds were really happy with what Jason Isbell had done. He and his wife Amanda Shires both said they were relinquishing their membership to the CMA, and how disappointed they were that in the in memoriam segment they did not mention John Prine or Jerry Jeff Walker or Billy Joe Shaver, who I know Prine, I get it. There's no reason for them to leave him out. He influenced so many songwriters, no matter what genre you worked in. It's just inexcusable that they didn't mention him, and it wasn't like it just happened a couple weeks ago. And I get that, and not so coincidentally, one of the times I saw John Prine here, Amanda Shires opened for him, and Jason Isbell was accompanying her, and then they played songs to him, so they were really close to him. So it was personal for them, and I get it. But yeah, Sturgill Simpson weighed in, and as we were saying before, I mean, it was kind of I appreciate the sentiment, but it's like none of their fans really listen to the music that CMA plays anyway. And so leaving that, like we were saying, it's kind of like a vegan saying, I'm not gonna eat at McDonald's anymore. Like, it's like, yeah, well, you never really were that affiliated with them anyway, but appreciate the gesture. I mean, Sturgill Simpson, and he's been adamant and super snarky about the whole country music establishment, and he said something like, I wouldn't be caught dead at this tacky ass glitter and Botox cake and bleep pony show even if my chair had a morphine drip. I just wanted to see if they would say his name, but nope. So he eventually took that tweet down, but he's been no holds barred with him when he goes after modern country and corporate country radio, and just what he thinks of the industry, how it ignores women, and basically how it treats songwriters in general. So that was interesting. No response from the CMA because, frankly, they don't really care because, like I say, those audiences don't really overlap at all.
Well, and another thing kind of related to that, the New York Times Magazine puts out some articles that the authors read read their own articles, I guess. So it's sort of an audio book, except it's shorter than that. But a couple of country artists talked about their place in Nashville and how close they came to losing some really treasured stuff, which has resulted in music being released.
Right. So it's this piece is about Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, who have been. I saw Gillian Welch for the first time. He was with her. David Rawlings was with her. He wasn't like made officially part of her act for an album or two. He was with her band, or he was her band the day. It was at the Grand Emporium. So this was late 90s because the Emporium closed in 2000. So that was the first time I saw them. So she's been around since the very late 90s. And she's just really interesting. She was raised in a pretty well-to-do family, private schools, studied writing, I think went overseas to college for a bit and came back and decided to pursue music as a career, and started writing these old-timey folk songs. I'm on the cover of her first record, looks like something out of a 1930, Dust Bowl portrait thing. She's wearing an old-timey dress and her hair is kind of old-fashioned, and she took a little grief for like cosplaying, like pretending to be, somebody's from another era and not very genuine about it. But the more music she put out, the more respect she got for her songwriting. Anyway, she and Rawlings bought this old recording studio that had been severely damaged by a tornado many years ago. The city wanted to tear it down, East Nashville. They bought it, went in, renovated it, kept it as a studio. And then in March, just as the pandemic was setting in and the world was spinning 180 degrees into darkness, a tornado went through Nashville, a pretty big one, did a lot of damage, including to their studio. And they spent like 12 hours straight just rescuing equipment and songs and recordings. And that's what this story is about. And they realized as they were doing this, she says, I realized that I just figured everything was safe here. They didn't have to worry about it. And now I know it could have been gone in a flash. So they went in and recorded a bunch of songs. She ended up releasing, so she and he have released almost 5 dozen songs just within the past 6 months or so, I guess, which is more songs than she had released in her 5 studio albums combined. So she's not super prolific, at least when it comes to recording. So it's a wealth of songs. A lot of them are really short. I've listened to a bunch, and it's just really interesting. What the discussion gets into eventually is talking to them about what this year has been like, because they would tour like crazy, North America, overseas, and they haven't. They're living in a city that typically buzzes and bristles with live music 18 to 20 hours a day, and it's nearly silent most of the time. And we talked about, what has set in with them and how just uncertain they feel about everything and how it is. I think she said something, this uncertainty with you feel when you're not doing what you love to do and what you do well. So like they don't really know what it's going to be like to go out and tour again because they've changed and writing hasn't come easy. And so it just kind of made me realize a lot of what I've been thinking about is true. It's like the people I worry about as much as any are the performers, the artists, the creators, the writers who can't get their music out into the public and what it's doing to them, to their psyches. And they kind of, articulated that. And in the end, it was hopeful. She's like, we're never going to stop making music. Somehow we will. But right now, it's everyone's kind of on pause and just sort of taking stock in who they are and where they're going and how they will respond once we're on the other side of this.
Yeah, sounds like a very, very interesting thing. And then we talk about the psyche, and I was talking to somebody today, and the where we're getting, obviously physically, Americans and people around the world are being affected greatly by COVID, but mentally it is doing real damage too. And that's just another example. If you can't do on a regular basis the things you love to do, or things are taken away from you, it takes a toll, man.
Right. And it's something that, they've been doing for 20 years, and doing 180 shows a year at least. And that was just severed, and they're just left with each other, looking at each other. And she said, I couldn't write. It's a good thing I found these songs, because they had to be sort of rewritten and touched up. And so it sort of aroused the creative spark and the creative flame. But, they were both saying, like, right now, or they implied this, like the thought of going out on the tour is a little imposing right now. Like, we'd have to remember how to do it, because so much other emotion has filled us between the last tour and now, that there's a lot to sort through emotionally. And it wouldn't be just like flipping on a switch and going out there and doing it. You'd have to reboot somehow. Yeah,
it's really kind of, if you played golf 180 days a year and then you didn't play for 2 years,
right,
you wouldn't be in good shape in that regard. We've got much more to talk about in music coming up with Tim. We always find great topics, and certainly he's real good at that, and I've got a couple things that are kicking around in my brain too. That comes your way next on Danny and Tim's Music Scene. It's Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, presented by Cinematic Visions.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early, before the cities even put out the notices, and we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426, but the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com. Put your information in and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. I just want to thank everybody for supporting local restaurants during this time of uncertainty. 23rd Street Brewery is now open until this pandemic is over. And right now, more than anything, local restaurants need your help and support. Come on out and see us. 23rd Street Brewery is open now from 11:30 till 9 o'clock for dine-in and carry-out. Whatever we can do to help you out, maybe with your catering needs, too. I appreciate all the support. And thank you for continuing to shop local.
Firsthand, I have enjoyed the benefits of the CBD products from Canaway. My back feels better and better these days, as a major part of my routine are the pain-relieving salve and the Pure Gold oil. And recently I had the pleasure of a treatment session using the Canaway CBD in conjunction with the Microlight 830 cold laser. The non-invasive treatment session worked wonders, and I could barely tell I was even being touched. TML 830 is the first 3B cold laser to get FDA approval, and in addition, the combination treatment with CBD is patent pending. The new smart laser is the only hands-free cold laser in the world and is used by athletic trainers, chiropractors, MDs, physical therapists, and veterinarians everywhere. You can learn more about all the great benefits from the complete line of Canaway CBD products by contacting my friend Sherry McCants at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312 to get outstanding information about Canaway. It's time to visit once again with Dr. Brad Woodall of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture. And Dr. Brad, your group has reached a significant milestone in receiving a prestigious award.
Danny, we've been honored for the 10th year in a row to receive the 5-Star Service Award from Integrity Doctors. And what this means is that all of our offices throughout Kansas City have made sure to give people excellent chiropractic and acupuncture care, be on time, and do a very complete and thorough job, and have great responses back from patients.
I know firsthand because I was just treated, for instance, today by you. You have a wide range of fantastic services.
Absolutely. Chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapies, rehab, anything that you need to keep you well in bones, muscles, joints, and nerves.
And I can't say how much it's benefited me in the time I've coming here. Upwards of 2 years, my back has improved 100%. And you can have that same kind of treatment too. For more information and your chance for a healthier way of life, visit asfca.com/Danny today. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Back with Tim, and I'll start off with something that is in the oh, duh category. I've mentioned a few times the thing you can access on Access TV, if you have that, called Rock Legends, and it's a snappy little short, generally basically 22 minutes plus commercials thing about a famous artist. A couple of them have been, I think they did a season maybe, I don't know when these were done. They're fairly recent. And it's music critics who sat around. Last night we were watching one, and I actually thought to myself, this would be just a perfect thing for Tim, except he'd have to be British. But anyway, all the people are British, but they do another series of them in the very same vein called The Day the Music Died, and it's about people who passed away before their time. And the one we watched last night was Buddy Holly. And the oh, duh aspect is Buddy Holly is really one of my favorite artists. I've been to the Buddy Holly Museum. I have a really cool T-shirt that was my standard go to the concert T-shirt with a jacket for quite a long time. I still pull it out every now and then. It's sort of a white silhouette of Buddy Holly's face with his glasses, and it always draws kind of a nice reaction from people. But I was watching this, and it just struck me again, which is the oh, duh aspect. What an unbelievable legacy someone who died when he was 22 years old and only really was in the public consciousness for less than 2 years had. And the two things that I guess I didn't know were that he is credited with being the person who created the template of the rock band, which is basically 2 guitars, a bass, and drums. And I did not know that.
Right.
And I also didn't know that the fact that he played a Fender Stratocaster is kind of what made that guitar super famous and that it made people want to play it. But I guess it just reinforced, and it's got me digging down, going down some rabbit holes on Buddy Holly. I have an 18-page Wikipedia thing right in my hand right now. Just an amazing, amazing person, ranked at one point the 13th most influential person by Rolling Stone magazine in rock music. And I guess I was reminded again, but those two little tidbits I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, of all the people who died young, I can't think of anyone whose death is more tragic than his, because, I mean, he predated the Beatles. He influenced the Beatles immensely. He influenced so many people, during the brief time he was alive and touring and recording, and then after. I mean, there are people. I've interviewed band members, within the last 20 years who were in their 20s who said, oh, yeah, they had just discovered Buddy Holly and had, no idea how inventive he was and how ahead of his time he was. And, Rolling Stone rated him 13th as far as influence goes. That
sounds low.
You could argue top 10 easily. Yeah. Just because, God, 22, I mean, there's that 27 Club, but a lot of those, Hendrix, that was late 60s when a lot of stuff had already happened. Rock was still finding itself, and there were still a lot of innovators back then, but there had been a lot before that. But really before him, he was very early and so creative and just an unbelievable songwriter. That's kind of also gets lost is what a crafty and creative songwriter he was, kind of out of nowhere.
And the thing is, the other thing that struck me is that the music he made sounds like at the latest, at the earliest, it was made right around the time of the Beatles, and he put that stuff out in 1956 and 1957. I mean, it was unbelievable, right. And it sounds fresh to this day. And also, he was so prolific. They were putting out like singles and albums for a decade after he died. He had produced so much material. Right. And the other part, I guess, that it's really, you mentioned how sad it is. He really was somebody who, in my mind, may well have quit being a performer and become a producer, because he was already sort of headed in that direction. He had started hanging around jazz musicians and classical music, and just an unbelievable talent that no matter what direction he went in, it would have been fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, you think of when anybody like that dies, you wonder what they would have done, but it's almost a given that he would have resonated in music in so many ways, because he was this real curious genius, and he was unique, and he just had his own way of doing things. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can think of what he might have done in the early 60s, and then when studio production changed so dramatically in the mid 60s to late 60s, what he might have done, it's immeasurable. It's so, he might be the saddest story. I mean, the day the music died. Well,
right.
There's something to that. It didn't die, but man, a lot of what could have happened went with him.
Yeah, and it is a sad story. His wife has never visited his grave, and she really feels guilty about the fact she always went on the tour, but she was pregnant and didn't feel well, and she feels like for sure he wouldn't have got on the plane if she was around. So there's a lot of sad aspects to it. And actually, the Buddy Holly story, I can recommend that film. That was very well done. And Gary Busey may be an idiot in his later years, but that was one of the most transformative performances. He turned himself into Buddy Holly. It was really kind of amazing. Yeah. So there's your oh duh moment for Dan today, but it allowed me to I'll probably trot out my Buddy Holly t-shirt again here soon.
But I think a lot of people don't realize the depth of his accomplishments and his genius. Because if you just hear the songs, that can be enough, but if you go behind them and read further into his story, it's even more impressive, and it's even more tragic.
Yeah, so I can highly recommend you digging around and just the couple of really, usually when I like artists who cover, sort of a genre that maybe not super hard rock or whatever, the stuff that they do that is the most pulsating reacts with me. And his drummer is a guy named Jerry Allison, unbelievably sharp drumming for that period of time, and things like Not Fade Away and Peggy Sue. I mean, just really unbelievable songs, and covered like a million times too. But very, very unique character, and certainly a great loss. And he'd be in his 80s now, but hell, he might still be doing stuff if he was alive today.
It seems like he would be.
Yeah, it does.
He'd be so inspired. He'd have reasons to stay alive, to grow old, because he'd be so interested in what was going on.
Well, we've got a couple of maybe producer-type stories. I'll recommend another thing that I've caught up with recently, a 2011 documentary called Produced by George Martin, and it was on PBS as a fundraiser, I think, very recently, but I'm sure you can get it in all the common areas. And what a fabulous piece that is, about a very fascinating, dapper gentleman, obviously the producer of the Beatles and a lot of other things. And there was a little kind of fun tidbit story. Dewar Burnett of America was on the documentary, and George Martin did produce America, which I've written a blog and a podcast about America as sort of one of the templates of my Bullet Train to Velveeta, of the fine line between good and not so good. But I will consider Tin Man one of their good songs, and the little tinkly piano part in that is George Martin. And it was just, they were telling the story based on the fact that he wasn't just going to stand behind the glass. I mean, he liked to get involved and do different things. Really a genius, and he was live when this particular documentary was made, and he's a great storyteller, and some of the Beatles are on it. It's just a great show.
I may have seen that. There's a couple about him on there.
Yeah, there's one this one's from 2011, so if you're looking up for that, that's what it is. It's called Produced by George Martin. His son's in it, too, talking about and interviewing him, so very, very good.
Yeah, I've seen parts of that. It's on a few stations. Yeah, the whole him working with America. I remember when those records came out, and I bought those. I was an America fan for a few minutes, but it's just like was kind of unfathomable that he chose to work with them, because they were so innocuous and had some of the worst lyrics ever put on record. But they were melodic. It was the softest of soft rock, some of it,
right.
And but I wouldn't want to think of what they would have been like without him, because he made them more than
they could have been.
significantly more than what they were. Yeah.
Right, but
yeah, he was so sophisticated and so learned. But listening to him talk to the Beatles, I remember conversations with McCartney about studio decisions and who ended up being right. And sometimes he was like, "Yeah, Paul, you were right," or it was like, "We never wanted to do that, but you had an idea and we went with it and look at it." So those guys being at the peak of their creative energy and trusting this older guy who was trained in classical music and super erudite and intelligent and sophisticated, but that pairing was just like it was historic because they wouldn't have been the same without him.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, George Martin was a fabulous producer, and then I guess America's part of it is a good way to put it, that they could put them over the top from being maybe completely innocuous, as you say. But the Beatles would have been fine. I think they would have been fine. But would they have been the Beatles as we remember them? Likely not, because the guy just had so many fabulous ideas. And one of the things they explored this is he sort of had a persona that would have fit in, like in being James Bond or something like that. We recently lost Sean Connery, but they said he could have played James Bond. Really very, very well done piece if you want to dig around for that in these days when we're going to be headed into a lot more isolation, it would appear. Speaking of producers as well, you've started listening to a podcast series that I'm familiar with also called Broken Record, and I think Malcolm Gladwell is involved with that. But the Broken Record ones are done with Rick Rubin, the producer, who has produced everybody from, shows a wide range of artists. I think I've told the story on here about how he produced Tom Petty's Wildflowers album, and he actually had heard a story about Jeff Lynne making drummers play each individual drum separately and doing the whole song like a hi-hat and one cymbal, and he, that's how crazy obsessive Lynne is. And then after having heard that, he actually used that technique in one song on Wildflowers with Tom Petty because he thought it was a good idea for that one particular song. I've often stated that if I was a drummer, I would probably have quit. But if Jeff Lynne had instructed me to kill Jeff Lynne. But anyway, Rick Rubin is really a good listen, and he's got some good stuff out there.
Yeah, so I've listened to he did one with Ben Montench, who was Tom Petty's fabulous keyboard organ Hammond B3 player, and had been with the band almost since its inception. I think I think Mudcrutch had already started, but 'cause I think he saw them as Mudcrutch. But he's got the perfect Tom Petty temperament. He's very slightly stoic but thoughtful and really articulate, and chooses his words carefully but speaks pretty openly. And what I liked about the interview is, and Rubin tends to do this, is he doesn't get in the way of the interview. He asks a question and then he listens to the answer, and he doesn't ask super long questions. He doesn't try to show off what he knows.
Right.
He lets the subject talk about it, and really good interview. And I learned, he got into how upset he was when Petty did the first solo record without him, and how hurt he was and how left out he felt. But then he took someone's advice and used that time off to go into rehab and get sober and get off drugs and alcohol. And he said, and I was better for it. So I'm kind of thankful for that. And it just sort of affirmed what I think most people think about the bond between members of that band. And, not only are they grieving his death, but the death of those songs. They won't be playing those songs anymore, at least not like the way they're used to playing them, and the way they used to play them so many times every tour. So it's, again, kind of sobering and sad, but it's a little more enlightenment into Tom Petty and his band, and one of its most beloved members. And then the other one I heard was Rubin interviewing Brandi Carlile, speaking of whom, and it's just great because she's so enthusiastic. And but the part that you want to hear is he talks about seeing her for the first time. He went to the Hollywood Bowl to see James Taylor. He saw her. He was so enthralled with her music and her performance. He went backstage and didn't really see much of James Taylor. And she was like, yeah, I remember that. That was a big deal. Because people saw you come back to talk to me, and I got tons of label interest after that because everybody thought you were going to sign me. And it generated a lot of interest, and it helped my career. But that wasn't the first time you saw me. And she told these two stories about the first two times he saw her, which was very intimate moments. She was basically kind of trying out, and really, really funny stories. And he does not remember either of them. You can tell he's just agonizing over it. Like, how did I forget that? Like, and he has like no recollection. And she's like, she remembers everything, like what he was wearing, and he's really agonizing over it because he seems like he would remember because he's kind of a perfectionist and really sensitive. So that was pretty funny. But the rest of the interview is great because she's really introspective and provocative, and I love her as a person and a performer and a songwriter. So, and then I started the one with Petty's daughter Adria about the Wallflowers project. I haven't finished that, but I love the tone of them, and I love the fact that because he's a producer and has been for so long and is involved in music. He can ask questions that most journalists wouldn't ask, because he's inside, and he gets some really good answers out of his subjects.
Well, Tim, we've done it again. We've managed to take Corona time and turn it into a time when you feel like having a Corona.
Right.
So we appreciate the time and look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks.
Okay. Next time, Danny.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like
Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.